Hello, people. Thank you for coming, and boy, it's been a long time since we've been able to welcome people in person to any event at all, so I'm feeling pretty excited about that. And I have a few people to thank. I'm Nancy, the owner of Everyone's Books, which all of you probably know, but if you don't, that's who I am. And I have a couple of people to thank. One is Mary Wallace Collins, right there, who made cookies for us and is, yay Mary. And we're accepting donations for Susu Community Farm for the cookies. You're welcome to eat the refreshments without making a donation, but should you make a donation, that's where it goes. Robin MacArthur, who is another extraordinary local writer and just wonderful human all around, is going to be the MC and going to introduce the 4 writers who are in this program. And I just wanted to say, I can't wait to be doing one of these for Robin for her next book, because that's going to happen. And Robin. So I think the books are going to be for sale around the corner. We decided to have them completely covered on the off chance that some water comes out of the sky. We just decided, losing hundreds of books is probably a bad idea. So we're around the corner. There'll be sales and signing afterwards, and it's on the, right around the corner under the roof. You'll see. Impossible to miss. So I think that's about it, and thank you for coming. And I was very disappointed that we don't have more people, and as one of the lovely people working at this great place, the Retreat Farm, which has been so generous in helping us put this event together, one of them said, people have kind of forgotten how to show up, and I think that might be true, and we have to start definitely getting people used to showing up again, because community is everything, and we definitely need to be encouraging it. So thank you all again for being here. Thank you to the Retreat Farm, and we're so excited about this place because it has huge potential to just add to our community, and it's already started doing it, and I know that a lot more is going to be happening here. So thank you, and welcome to Robin, and welcome to everybody.
Hello, and thank you to Everyone's Books for hosting this event and for being our incredible local bookstore. Woohoo! You saved most of our butts during this long year of isolation, I think, keeping us connected to other humans through words. And it's such a delight to be standing here. I haven't really left my house in 14 months. And I'm so grateful for our incredible community and for this storied piece of Abenaki land that we're sitting on, and for these sacred waters of Wantastigak that we're next to. It's just such a beautiful space. And for the Retreat Farm, who makes it available to all of us. As I was preparing these marks, I kept tearing up with gratitude, and I'm going to do it again, because I haven't left my house and so on. But really just for this community full of such amazing artists and writers, and also people who are so completely dedicated to the ideals of social justice and equity and community. It's such a unique place in the world because of that. Art and activism, words and social justice, and storytelling as a means to bring all of those things to the forefront of our minds. So today we're going to have brief readings from each of the authors, and then we'll have a Q&A up here on the stage. And we'll have an opportunity for all of you to ask questions as well. So none of these authors need introductions in this town, and yet I'm going to introduce them anyway. Our first reader is Angela BERKFIELD, who will be joined by some of the co-authors from the book Parenting for Social Justice, which is just now out from our very own Green Writers Press. Angela has taught in a variety of settings over the past 2 decades and is a co-founder of the Root Social Justice Center, Act for Social Justice and Equity Solutions, In 2015, she gave her first Parenting for Social Justice workshop. Dozens of parents and caregivers came together to learn how to talk with their kids about topics like racism, immigration, homelessness, and gender identity. Now, Angela, with a powerful group of co-authors and contributors, has put those tools together in a book for all of us to read, study, and share. Angela is a guiding light, a force, and an inspiration to so many of us in this community. She is someone whose vision and work seems to radiate out in all directions, both under the soil and above ground. Please give a warm welcome to Angela and her co-authors.
I forgot to say one thing, come on up, Angela, which is that if you purchase a book here, 10% of all of the book purchases will go to the Root Social Justice Center. So,
hi, everybody. Come on. Hi. Thanks, Nancy. Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Retreats. I'm Angela, and I'm honored to be here today with 3 other co-authors of this lovely book that we just received in the mail last week, so it's still very fresh and exciting for us. There are 3 people from our team who are not here today. But those of us who are here will introduce ourselves. I do want to shout out Brittney Washington, LEILA Raven, and CHRISSY Brat, who are not here today. They don't live close by and so weren't able to come. My connection to this book is both as a local activist and organizer and teacher, and as a parent. I have 2 boys who are 9 and 12, and trying to break into the retreat over there, or something, I don't know, up to no good, of course. And yeah, I really realized as I was beginning the parenting journey that I needed support and accountability, and so I brought to bring social justice into my parenting. And so I brought together people that I knew. We met together over a series of months, and that community of practice was really powerful in my parenting journey and for this community. The amount of energy and wisdom that came out of that circle for social justice in this community has been amazing. And so I wanted to write a book and share that with other people, and I brought some other people on board, and I will let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jaimie. I am a co-author of the book, or not the book, yeah, technically the book, I guess that's accurate. I'm the co-author of the chapter for class and economic justice. I am a mother of 4 kids. I have an almost 17-year-old, a 14-year-old who's in a playpen over there, a 6-year-old who's not here right now, and the 9-month-old on my adorable husband's lap over underneath the tree. And I'm going to pass it on to Rowan.
Hi guys. I'm Rowan, Rowan Parker. I co-wrote the chapter on disability justice. I come at this from a couple of different angles. I work in early intervention, so I'm working with families with children under the age of 3 who have developmental delays and disabilities. I am a foster parent, and I have disabilities myself. And so I was really excited to get to work on this to share some of the things that I'm really passionate about.
Hi, my name is Abby, and I'm also one of the co-authors of the Disability Justice chapter. I live here in Brattleboro, know a lot of people here. Hi everybody, thanks for coming. And I came to work on this chapter because of my experience as a parent of a child who lives with a disability, and learned a lot as I was writing, and very appreciative of the perspective of the many wise activists and thinkers that we got to study and read as we were working on this chapter. And I'm going to read an excerpt from the chapter. Each chapter has personal stories at the beginning from the authors that sort of set the stage for why each person is part of this book. And so I'm going to read a little bit from my personal chapter. And I will say that my son is not here. I do have one of my kids here who's sitting in the back somewhere. My older son is the one with disabilities. He's not here because he's had a very busy day. But he does know that, you know, he's part of this book, and he has approved my sharing his story with you today. So, I grew up white, middle class, able-bodied, and cisgender. In other words, fully a part of the dominant culture in the US. I also grew up in the 1980s and 1990s as part of the colorblind culture, in which recognizing or naming differences among people was frowned upon. The dominant narrative among white people at the time was that if we see everyone as human and do not notice racial differences, and I believe this also applies to disabilities, then we'll all be the same and the world will be a better place. This message was reinforced through songs, books, posters, and the total absence of conversation around race or disability. I learned early on that I shouldn't voice questions or observations about people being different from me, simply from observing that the adults in my life didn't engage in these conversations. The first time I remember an adult in my life explicitly talking about race was as a teenager, when a black neighbor said in casual conversation that her best friend was white and they didn't have any problems with each other. I remember feeling like this conversation was a little bit illicit. I didn't know how to respond or what to think. For me, the silencing of honest conversation around race influenced my thinking about disability as well. Special ed students in my school were on a completely different program, not part of the larger school culture. Children with disabilities who were mainstreamed into my classroom seemed like troublemakers. There was no conversation around why unfamiliar or disruptive behaviors were happening. The lack of explanation led me to form my own opinions without any support from adults. Like most kids, I believed my experience to be the norm and that everyone should be like me. Without guidance to teach me otherwise, at least with regard to disability, I developed an ableist perspective. Now, I'm the mother of 2 children who are now ages 8 and 12. My older son was born with physical anomalies that affect his arms and hands and his face and ear, as well as his hearing. When he was very young, some visiting family members proclaimed they didn't even notice the difference, as if to assure me that I had nothing to worry about. But I wasn't worried about his physical differences, nor was I apprehensively watching people's reactions and hoping they wouldn't notice him. I knew that people did notice his differences, and that was okay with me. But having 2 people who loved my child tell me that they didn't even notice a significant part of his body felt strange, disingenuous, and like a devaluation of who he is. This is the disability version of colorblind racism, claiming we don't see differences rather than addressing how those differences impact our relationships with one another, as well as people's ability to access public spaces, education, and community events. My child's unique body is part of who he is, and it affects the way he operates in the world and the way the world relates to him. There is no way to separate him from the physical anomalies that he was born with. We can't know who he would be without his unique experiences, but I assume that he would be a completely different person, as would I be a completely different parent without him and his experiences to guide me. I don't want people not to notice or to pretend not to notice his body. I want them to notice him and to see the amazing ways that he has learned to function and thrive in a body that is different from a typical child's. I want them to expect him to excel, to push him towards greatness, and to understand when he does things differently than typical kids. So I'm gonna stop there. Just a little piece. And I'm gonna pass the mic, thank you, to Jaimie. Thanks, everybody.
So I'm gonna around a little bit in the chapter here. For the last 500 years, the way we in the U.S. have managed our home, including all of the places that the U.S. has controlled and influenced due to U.S. imperialism, has been through the extraction of natural resources, the exploitation of labor, through slavery, cheap migrant labor, and mass incarceration, and the belief in infinite growth of GDP, as opposed to sustainable growth, all while denying the ecological and social consequences. This management system we currently live in is called capitalism, and more particularly, corporate capitalism, dominated by bureaucratic and hierarchical corporations. Capitalism creates class divisions. Different tactics have been used to foment class division. For example, subtle messaging in media that instills a belief in the myth of a classless society where it is possible for anyone to be independently wealthy. This causes many people to be unwilling to challenge power structures because they believe they have a chance at a bigger piece of the pie. Catalyst Project defines classism as the policies, attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs that discriminate against and are used to disempower working class and poor people. Classism is one way within a capitalist system that the concentration of power and wealth is maintained. It perpetuates the belief that people are poor because they are lazy and stupid, rather than exposing the nature of the capitalist system that relies upon exploitatable classes to thrive. If we are going to interrupt a harmful class system, we need to notice where and how we participate in thinking that blames people, even ourselves, for inequalities rather than blaming a larger system that is exploiting people's labor and disempowering people. In the capitalist economy, where many people labor for the benefit of a few, it is very hard to change the unjust economic system because the people with the most wealth hold a lot of power and are invested in keeping things the way they are. They aren't inherently bad or greedy people. It's just that the way it's set up is working for them. They are afraid of what would happen if someone else was making decisions, so it feels safer for things to stay the way they are. The people with little or no wealth may want to change things, but they have very little power individually and are so busy trying to survive that they don't have the time and energy necessary to take on the systems that are in place. Now, not from the book, separate here. My family and I, we have little power to change things. My ability to perform actions dedicated to social justice is in direct proportion to my power in society. I don't have power over any systems. I can't afford to choose products based on their company's ethical standing. Politicians and the general public don't seem to care about poor people. We're at the bottom and easier to ignore because we don't have access to power. My family is beholden to systems that are designed to keep us poor while shaming us and somehow providing the opportunity for other more wealthier people to feel better about themselves in the names of charity. The only sphere of influence that I can fully practice social justice activism in and have it matter is in parenting my children. Parenting them is an act of social justice. Because I've learned and unlearned about the reality of things like poverty, class, economic distribution, privilege, oppression, and the messaging that goes along with all of it, I'm better able to speak with my kids about these topics. So I talk with my kids in age-appropriate language that they can understand and comprehend, and I do my best to prepare them to be change makers in society. For example, I teach my kids that it's not okay for a job to expect them to work for poverty wages. Because they have learned this lesson, they have a better shot at earning wages that will actually pay their bills. My hope is that we can get enough parents to teach their kids that same message, and then most jobs won't be able to get away with paying starvation wages to their employees. It won't be perfect, because nothing is, but we can still make it better than it is right now. And that's the real goal, right? Systematic improvement, progression. Because little pebbles can make giant ripples, especially if we're all throwing stones.
All right, I'm going to read the section from the chapter on disability justice called What is Disability Justice? What is disability justice? It's not just about awareness or even accessibility, although both of those are important. It's about creating a new world, one in which our liberation, happiness, and success are bound up with one another's. We know we want our children to behave appropriately around people with disabilities and to include them in our community, but disability justice is so much more. At its heart, disability justice is about people with disabilities having agency, including the power to choose where they live, with whom they interact, and how they exist within community. Much of the disability justice movement focuses on the social model of disability, which is the idea that disability is not a problem in itself, but rather that people face difficulty and discrimination within an inaccessible environment. Many people with disabilities are not looking for a cure or way to become non-disabled, and feel that emphasis on cure is an erasure of their identities. This is especially prevalent in the deaf and autistic communities. The most important piece of disability justice, as in all social justice movements, is the centering of disabled voices. The phrase, "nothing about us without us," in its modern usage originated in the disability rights movement. While it's important in all social justice movements, this concept is especially important to stress within the disability rights movement because so much of the time our stories are told by non-disabled people and disabled narratives are ignored. Many people with disabilities have their lives limited or controlled by non-disabled people. This is especially true of people with mental illness or intellectual disabilities who may be forced to receive unwanted treatment, be seen as dangerous, or may have very little agency and be infantilized by non-disabled people. Even supposedly positive portrayals of people with disabilities often fall into what those in the movement call inspiration porn, in which people with disabilities are held up as inspiring or brave simply for living with their disabilities. This removes agency and further dehumanizes people with disabilities. The disability justice movement seeks to give everyone agency, to give everyone a voice, no matter how marginalized. Disability justice is not about securing equal rights and access for people with disabilities. It's about shifting our worldview to one in which disability is not viewed as a tragedy that has to be overcome, but a difference to be honored and celebrated. It's about creating a just world for everyone. Thank you.
All right, and I will wrap up our section by reading from the chapter on collective liberation. And as you've heard just little bits right here, the chapters are really organized by personal story, the systemic larger context, and then what would justice look like, and then how are we talking with our kids? What are the things that we can do with our kids? How are we working in our families for these for justice? So this is the chapter on collective liberation. In my parenting, I strive to give my kids the tools for recognizing how they are harmed when others are harmed, and for embodying that belief. I am teaching my kids that each human being is valuable. Each human being has struggles. Our struggles are connected. Some people have been and are being harmed more than others. Sometimes we contribute to that harm even when we don't mean to. We can apologize and transform the pain and separation into love and connection. Black and Native American liberation, queer and trans liberation, disability liberation, and poor liberation is essential and prioritized in collective liberation. There's never a better time than now to work for liberation in small and big ways. In all of my work to gather good social justice kids' books, I found so few that do a good job of conveying the concept of collective liberation. When our storybooks don't convey the concept, we have to understand the concept ourselves and bring it into our conversations about our kids' books, as well as in other moments with our kids. For example, when I'm reading the book Sitting Bull with my kids, I talk about how our ancestors were some of the settler colonizers who stole land in the Midwest from the Native people, which benefited our family directly. My family farmed the land and made enough money to have a house and go to college, all while not even acknowledging the existence of the people native to that place, nor our connection to the issues that the tribes in the Midwest face today. Our ancestors hurt people. We are still benefiting, and those people are still hurting. Since we are all connected, we are really still hurting too, even though we often ignore it. I compare it to something they can understand. Remember how you hit your brother and stole his money yesterday? Are they listening? And then you didn't apologize and he was still crying? What if that went on for days and weeks and years? What if you never apologized and never gave back the money? He would stay mad and he might not play with you anymore. It wouldn't be that fun in our house anymore. It would make all of us hurt. I talk about history, I relate it to my kids' lives, I ask if they have questions. I can hear you thinking, this is too advanced for my kids. But you better believe that a 5 or 6-year-old Lakota kid already knows the story of how their land was stolen, how their ancestors were massacred, and of their ancestors who resisted. Many of those kids are learning how to resist colonization through learning ancestral languages, cultural knowledge, and stories, as well as showing up to protest to protect the water. It is only right that my kids, who are white, who benefited from that oppression, also know the story, because it's true, so they don't repeat it, and so they can understand and make reparations a reality. Thanks, everyone.
I'd forgotten the beauty of hearing people read live in person. It's gives me chills. I forgot to say earlier that I hope the books are for sale over there. The books are beautiful. They are all hot off the press. And books take years, if not lifetimes, to write. And they are labors of love. And so I hope you buy not one of each book, but multiple copies of each book and give them to your neighbors and loved ones and friends, because books are gifts that never stop giving. Okay, our next rock star to introduce also needs no introduction. Anne Braden is the founder of Gun Sense Vermont, an organization that has radically reshaped the conversations about gun regulation in this state. After the 2016 election, she helped create the local Love Brigade, a movement to send love postcards to people experiencing hate. It started locally here in Brattleboro and then has moved outwards and become a national movement. Amidst all of that incredible activism work, she was writing books. And like everything Anne touches, those books have turned to gold. Her first published book, The Benefits of Being an Octopus, was named an NPR Best Book of 2018, a Bank Street list for Best Children's Books, a Dorothy Canfield Fisher List book, and has been on many other lists, and has been read and loved and adored, and has changed the lives of thousands of middle grade students across the country. Her new hot-off-the-press book, Flight of the Puffin, is already receiving starred reviews and is destined to change as many young lives as her first book did. Please welcome the incredible Anne Braden.
My puffin mask, but I'm still wearing my puffin dress. Thank you for that lovely introduction, Robin. And it is so nice to see actual people in real life. So, I started writing Flight of the Puffin in the middle of someone's presidency who was very divisive and basically tried to divide our country with basically every day. And I was so conscious of how much it was about, you cannot trust that other group of people, and you are not like them. But I had, at the same time, I was traveling around to lots of different places in this country that in theory were very different from each other, talking about the benefits of being an octopus with students. And you talk to 12-year-olds, and you do not see these huge gaping divisions. You see kids. And you are so conscious of the level of the heart being connected, no matter where you are. And so this book came out of my anger, but me processing my anger in a way that I wanted to show that hope and connection is possible. And so it's about 4 very different kids who live in different parts of the country and all feel pretty alone, even though they don't necessarily recognize that at first. And it's about how one tiny little act of kindness from a stranger can send out these ripple effects that
change things in ways that you wouldn't expect, and start to show these kids that they're actually just awesome just the way they are, and that they're not, in fact, alone. And so I'm going to read, there's 4 different perspectives, and I'm going to read you just a couple pages from each one. Starts with Libby, and these are all on the same day. Libby, who, by the way, is inspired by local, she's in Bellows Falls, but it's close enough, by Kara Lesgard, who is so inspiring that she grew into this very phenomenal character in a book. Libby, this is going to be the best sunrise ever. I slather on more orange paint, catching the drips of my paintbrush and mixing them into the hot pink. I swirl it around and around. My paintbrush is like the band teacher conducting. I don't play an instrument, but I've seen him waving his arms when I peek in the band room. I dip my brush back into the can and make even bigger circles, then add extra dollops above like sparks flying up. I love how the sparks look. I know that's not how people usually make sunrises, but there's fire involved, right? I add more on the other side. I have to. There's too much joy inside me to not. I step back. I knew this would make me feel better. Now it's time to add the yellow. I kneel down and pry the lid off the can, a blazing inferno just waiting to be unleashed. That's when I hear footsteps. And Principal Hecton's voice. Libby Delmar, what have you done to that wall? I sit in the seat in front of Principal Hecton's desk. He collapses into his chair and lets out a sigh. His desk would look better with polka dots. He could get the magnetic kind, and then those of us having to stare at it could rearrange them to keep it fresh. Orange, blue, and purple dots would be nice. Principal Hecton leans back and closes his eyes. I should have known. Maybe with a few yellow dots. That'd really pop. He opens his eyes and leans over the desk. Are you going to be just like your brother and your dad? No way, is he kidding? I tried to do the exact opposite of them. Because I don't think I could handle that, he says. Okay, maybe I did do some bad stuff, but it was to make things better, and it already did. I eye my still wet paint splotches on my green pants. Value added. And don't think I didn't hear stories about your grandpa, too, back when I was in school. Principal Hecton shakes his head. I've got to tell you, I'm tired of your family pushing people around. I press my lips together and try to imagine that sunrise. I'm not like them. Principal Hecton eyes me. And weren't you just in my office a week ago? It was 12 days. For physically assaulting Danielle Fisher? That was a mistake. I shouldn't have let her get to me. I wasn't wearing that awesome rainbow outfit for other people. I was wearing it for myself. Who cares if she said I looked like a freaky clown? Well, my fist cared. As you know, we have rules around here for a reason. He keeps talking, and I have to bite my lip hard so I don't talk back. Yes, I know punching her in the face was the wrong thing to do. Yes, I know that not thinking was the problem. But did Danielle think before she talked? Because if she did, that's even worse. And I get that girls aren't supposed to give other people bloody noses. Instead, everyone should be like model student Danielle, who fights the right way by convincing the entire softball team to stop talking to me. So that even Adriana Randall now walks past me without a word, as if we haven't spent nights sprawled on pillows and giggling on her bedroom floor. That sunrise was going to help me ignore it all. All right, I'm going to skip ahead to the next chapter. Jack. Jack lives in a rural town in Vermont with a 2-room schoolhouse for 17 kids, K-8 school. Joey is tugging my shirt again. Jack, he says. I stop dribbling the ball and squat down next to him on the blacktop so I can hear him over the shrieks of the other little kids. What's up, little man? He points. Up. 2 more points. Joey doesn't say many words when he's focused on something. I put the basketball in his hands. You ready? He grins. He's ready. I spin him around so he's facing him away from me, and I lift him toward the rim. Here comes Joey for the dunk, I yell. I can feel Joey's ribs through his shirt as he squeals and tips the ball into the hoop. He's the same size my little brother Alex was, and just as focused. I set him down on the blacktop, and he runs after the ball. I know he's going to want to go again. The blacktop is finally clear of snow, and he's determined to get 10 points this recess. I glance at Todd and Sturgis, who are waiting for me to come play football, but they'll have to wait a little longer. A speck on the blacktop glints in the sun, like glitter. I stoop down, but it's only a piece of neon green foam, probably from the playground ball that's starting to fall apart. I flick it off my finger and swallow hard.
Alex used to sneak bags of glitter home from school in his lunchbox. He loved that stuff, but my parents didn't. No boy needs glitter, my dad said. It's just gonna get everywhere, my mom said. And it did. Scattered in his bedroom rug, tucked in the folds of the back seat of our pickup, in the corners of Alex's kindergarten cubby. I was still finding that glitter long after he was gone. He zipped my shirt again. Joey, that is. He tugs at it, even though I'm already looking right at him. His eyes are all lit up, like inside him a whole stadium full of people is chanting his name, hoping he can deliver the game-winning dunk. One more time, okay? I say. When I cross the blacktop to where Sturgis and Todd are waiting, Sturgis tosses the football to me. Took you long enough. I shrug and throw it back to him. You could have started without me. Not if we wanted to play 3-on-3. I look across the muddy field to where the other three kids are waiting. Come on, they're 6th graders. You could have taken them. Our school has 3 boys in 6th grade and 3 of us in 7th. There was once a guy in the grade above us, but he moved to a less rural part of Vermont back in 3rd grade. But the 6th graders are cool enough. When you're in a 2-room K-8 schoolhouse, you find a way to get along with everyone. You want to play or not? Sturgis says. Yeah, I want to. I grab the ball out of his hand and take off across the field at top speed so Sturgis and Todd don't have a chance of catching me. I team up with 2 of the 6th graders, and our team is up 14-3 when Mr. Sasko gives his nod from the door to let me know that recess is over. I stuff the football under my arm and call to the rest of the kids to head in. This afternoon I'm supposed to read to the younger kids, probably cloudy with a chance of meatballs again if Mrs. Lincoln lets the kids choose. I'm rounding up the last of the younger students when an unfamiliar car pulls into the parking space next to Mr. Sasko's truck. It's shiny, like it didn't spend all of mud season on Haycock's dirt roads. The woman who gets out of the car has on a suit and high heels. Not the best footwear for a muddy parking lot. I'm about to follow the other kids inside when Mr. Sasko appears at the door again. His face is strained. He strides out to meet the woman. Lucinda, it's good to see you. I don't think I've ever seen you outside of Montpelier. Welcome to Haycock School. To what do we owe this special visit? The lady gives a tight smile. Oh, I'm just coming to check out things and see what you're up to at your little school. I will pause there. Go to the next character. This is Vincent. I settle onto the floor behind the locker room trash can with my math notebook. Only a few more weeks until we get to the geometry unit. I've been teaching myself geometry online, but it's not the same as having Mr. Bond explain it. I turn to a fresh page in my notebook and start drawing triangles. Triangles are everywhere you look. There are triangles in the floor tiles, in the metal supports beneath the locker room benches. Even the people in the school form a triangle. One side is the popular kids who are good at PE and looking cool. Another side is the kids who want to be like the popular kids but aren't quite as good at that stuff. And the third side is the creative, artistic kids who don't care about being popular and are instead cool in their non-popularity. Everyone knows where they fit. My mom wants me to be one of those creative kids. She runs an art supply store where we live in Seattle, and she's got short purple hair. She's even named me Vincent after that Starry Night artist guy, Van Gogh. But I didn't get those genes. I guess when my mom was looking through the sperm donor's profiles, she didn't think she'd have to choose someone artistic. She thought she'd have that part covered. She was wrong. The other kids at school form a triangle, but me, I am a point in space. I finish filling up one page with triangles and begin a new page. Suddenly there's a sneaker next to my math book. 2 sneakers with legs. You want us to believe you were actually on a baseball team? It's Cal Carpenter and a bunch of his friends. He's talking to me, isn't he? What team? I say. He gestures at my shirt with his foot. I look down and remember I'm wearing an old rec league baseball shirt. I made contact with the ball precisely one time. That was when a fly ball from my own teammate hit me on the head while I was sitting on the bench. And there was no making the team. There was only my mom making me do it. When's that shirt from? 3rd grade? 4th, I say, which is totally different from 3rd. I can't be the only 7th grader who still fits into shirts from 4th grade. That's sad, Cal says to his friends. I bet he hasn't been able to be on a team since then. He doesn't actually sound sad about it. I am also not sad about being on a baseball team. They announced baseball tryouts a few weeks ago. All I could think was there is no way anyone could convince me to play that horrible sport again. Look, Cal's friend Zachary says. He's even drawing baseball diamonds in his notebook. It's his dream, isn't it, to be on the baseball team again, Cal says. His dream! Cal and Zachary and the rest of them start laughing all over themselves. I don't care about baseball, I say. Sure you don't, Cal says. That's why you're drawing fields in your notebook, yells Zachary. They're triangles, I say. Triangles! Now they're doubled over in laughter. Right. Why do they care if I like baseball? Is it not possible to mind your own business at the school? They're still laughing when they pick me up and put me in an empty locker like it's the easiest thing in the world. Never mind my flailing limbs. Or Vincent. All right, last one. T. Wet concrete, sirens, shadows, never safe to sleep, but so very tired. Pico snuggles up, her fur warm against me. Follow her breath, breathe with her, trust her, only her. One breath at a time, still here. So those are all 4 characters. And I will leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Can't wait to share this with my kids. There's a little breeze coming up now and then, which is so nice. I hope you're all getting some of it. Our next rockstar reader, SHANTA GANDER, is a poet, a writer, and a multidisciplinary artist whose work has appeared in Prism, Itinerant Literary Magazine, Palette Poetry, Blavity, Dame Magazine, The Crisis Magazine, and Miss Magazine blog. SHANTA received an MFA, receiving, one or the other, I think received an MFA from Vermont College of Fine Arts and is the 2020 recipient of the Arthur Williams Award for Meritorious Service to the Arts from the Vermont Arts Council. She was named the Diode Edition's 2020 full-length book contest winner for her debut poetry collection, which is literally hot off the press still, Ghetto Claustrophobia, Dreamin' of Mama While Trying to Speak Woman in Woke Tongues. I have long admired SHANTA's provocative questions, her dedication to making this a more inclusive and welcoming community for all, her stunning photographic sensibilities, her powerful voice, and her tenacious reverence for language. Please help me welcome the singular and radiant SHANTA GANDER.
Thank you, everybody. There is the part of writing life they do not tell you about. So there's a lot of work that went into this book, several years old. And that's all I'll say. I also want, and as this poem that I'm about to read clarifies, ghetto to me is anywhere, any place, and it is not attached to a specific group of people. Ghetto claustrophobia. Whether place, people, state of mind, you be locked in until you don't want to be. Noun, people. Ghetto claustrophobics. Also, ghetto claustrophobes. Ghetto claustrophobians. 1. Any group of people. They evade capture. They evade description. 2. Identity. Perceived or imagined. Noun, a place. Ghetto claustrophobia. 1. Fashioned for but not by. Think characters, think props. 2. Big, so big, expansive, endless. 3. Any place. The place with the matching riding mowers. That place where cliques of moms go by the same name. 4. Hotel room, apartment, house. Dreamscape, cityscape, rulescape, selfscape. Could be another country. Could be a human body as container, as shell, as place, from block to brick to burb to brownstone to any place, as in so many, as in endless. 5. These places, real and imagined, just like people, they evade capture. Adjective, state of mind, states of being. Only an ailment if you want it to be. 1. Black girlhood in America. 2. Nightmares. 3. Stages of human development. Mother who brung you 3. Some say. Mama's 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 mama, some kind of medicine woman, or was it she made balm? She made for estranged souls. A tangled tale on mama's side about how all the men lost, eaten. How all the men got no names, well, few. Mama's grandfather went by Singh. Mama's great-grandfather, a full name. The women? They be the kind refusing unknowing. As in, they got names. As in, follow the trail of chicken feet. Follow all the ways we know seeing with our eyes closed. One of Papa's great-grandmamas, a Cherokee woman. Papa's great-grandpapa, a white man. Both them, no name. Names get lost like that, but follow their daughter, Betsy. Follow the stories. Her grandchildren tell it. She washed her hair in first rain. On Mama's side, when one of great-grandmama's Josephine's 16 died, I wanted to know, how do you make dead tongues speak? Initial offering, gratitude, make space for what you ask, not as stranger, as kin. And when you ask, be bound by blood. And as for the talk part, the speak, notice the way sentient cinerariums carry the bones, the way they buzz between breath and letters, the bed of their humming. And that one story, Mama talked about the water breaking. She walked opposite of the hospital the night I came. Those bones, they started to chant in that other story. That story where they said, true story. My mother did. The water broke and she was walking the opposite direction of the hospital. Dreaming. I'm at 280 Collins Street, sometimes on a highway, on a train, always headed east. Maybe I'm all these places incarnate, the one who evades naming, the one who refuses mapping. I'm also going to take this opportunity to read some new work. I'm one of those people that loves research. I love it. I like digging into people's, places, things. This poem is dedicated to Ramus, who was a real figure, formerly an enslaved man, who lost his life for building a chest that is now in the Kentucky Historic Society. You can read more all about the chest. The chest is cursed, according to all the stories. How to reverse a conjure for Ramus. Owl's blood, too easy. Easy like the way you appeared and disappeared life with ease. But that kind of power always has balance. When you and yours want to be gods, know that even gods must observe the rules. No buried jars facing east, under no flowering tree, no owls killed by human hands. For this kind of undoing requires Queen Ranavalana's commandments for the way back. Again, this is all new work in another manuscript. Queen Ranavalana was the queen of Madagascar, 1828 to 1861. And people incorrectly just characterized her, but she was a fierce ruler. Silent observation, not agreement. Silence and observation are the way back. 1. Undo any agreements with the colonizers. 2. Untwist your tongue from their speak. 3. Unlearn their symbols, create your own. 4. Use their symbols, use their knowledge, dismantle their house. 5. Find the footsteps of those you belong to, follow them. 6. Build a mirage of simplicity. 7. Get their gods out of your veins, rinse their prayers from your mouth. 8. Guard your natural resources, you'll know what they are. 9. Become all of and none of what they say. Be the wild they fear. 10. For the ones you trust, test them with poison. For the ones you trust, they will survive this ordeal. Be and do all these things, and these things they accuse, because I am queen of an island, but you are a sovereign self. Miss is the last one. My advisor couple of semesters ago gave me this idea to imagine countries, all the places in this other new manuscript talking to each other. It was a very interesting activity. So this one is Africa's interrogatories to America. Do you remember your name your children gave you before they came? Do you remember the shape of your body, the rise and fall of your bosom? How no part of you was beholden to any man, let alone self-made sovereignty? Do you remember your face before they changed it? Show me what you were before they made you forget. Do you remember the realm of your belly before they made you dine upon bodies? Do you remember taste before your tongue was trained in blood? Do you remember what you are, who you are? Now that you've forgotten, what do you want to be? What will you be, child? What will you be? Now that you've mimicked your kidnappers, continuing to take so many parts of me. Thank you.
Those are gorgeous, and I can't wait to read the next book, Shanta, with those new poems in it. And now we have our last reader, our last rock star, although serious, not the least. Can you imagine a group of more powerful women? What a collection. Diana Whitney writes across the genres in Vermont with a focus on feminism, motherhood, and sexuality. Her first book, Wanting It, became an indie bestseller and won the Ruberty Book Award in Poetry. She was the longtime poetry critic for the San Francisco Chronicle, where she featured women poets and LGBTQ+ voices in her column. Her essays, op-eds, and book reviews have appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Kenyon Review, Glamour, and many other places. She won the 2015 Women's National Book Association Poetry Prize and has received many grants. She is also works as a feminist activist in her community and beyond. Her advocacy for survivors of sexual violence has been featured in the New York Times, the Boston Globe, and the Christian Science Monitor. And now she has edited an anthology of poems that I truly believe will change the lives of many. Created and compiled for young women, You Don't Have to Be Everything is filled with works by a wide range of poets, from Amanda Gorman, who read at Joe Biden's inauguration, to best-selling authors like Maya Angelou, Elizabeth Acevedo, Sharon Olds, Naomi Shihab Nye, and Mary Oliver. These are poets from a diverse backgrounds, poets who sing of human experience in ways that are free from conventional ideas of femininity. Diana has also included powerful introductions in the book on themes of seeking, loneliness, attitude, rage, longing, shame, and belonging. I went out and bought this book for my daughter, and then I immediately gave it to my neighbor who teaches middle school students. I believe this book will not just brighten lives, but save them. Please welcome Diana Whitney.
Thank you so much, Robin. And thank you, Nancy. I don't see you at the moment, but thank you, Everyone's Books, for inviting all of us here. And thanks all of you. I feel like we need a 7th inning stretch or something. Like if you need to do this or go to There's a Wonderful Table of Cold Water and clementines and cookies. So yeah, thanks for coming out of hibernation. It feels pretty profound to be here right now. So I just want to acknowledge that, and to hear writers reading their work aloud, not through a screen, you know, in 3D. So yeah, part of me, I might tear up a little bit. Yeah. So I'm really aware that we're at the end and everyone's been concentrating, and yeah, please roam. And like I kind of feel like with poetry, you don't have to work too hard listening to it. You can kind of just let it like enter through your ears without needing your brain to try to figure it out. So I encourage you to just let the poems maybe wash over you and not try to get them. And I'm just going to read a handful, and then I'm really looking forward to having a discussion with other amazing authors. So I'm going to read the first poem in this book, and it's by Stephanie Burt, who's a trans poet. She is a very brilliant Harvard professor, and she came to read at the Brattleboro Literary Festival a few years ago, and I was really honored to meet her and hear her read in the Latches, and I just knew I needed to have her voice in this book and to actually choose it for the very first poem. And it's called Final Exam, Stephanie, and it's a reimagining of her girlhood, of what it might have been. And I'll read it to you, and maybe I'll speak a little bit more about why I chose it for this collection. Final Exam, Stephanie. Please turn in or leave behind any scratch materials. You have now agreed to follow all the rules. Good girls will be notified sooner. Next year you are going. You have to look forward to until. Like walking out of an uncompleted pencil sketch, an unprimed canvas, the torn off end of a page, like being a bracket in the fragment of ancient Greek that I encountered in my best friend's photograph. Nobody is going to report me if I break down, break up, break in three, like a bone left to us from Beach Week's campfire feast. Like the page after the last page of a comic book. Like whatever takes place under the oblong gleam on microscope glass. Like the white space between the grays of a birch branch shadow on snow. Like the aluminum ladder in our basement on its side on the cold concrete going nowhere. It's June. I have a new and golden pendant, a folding hand mirror, a calculator too. Its heft in my hand grins like a mirror pointed back at the sun. What is this air, this space, in which nobody rewards me for conformity, or punishes me, or keeps track of my time, what I wear, how I see myself, or tries to tell me what my name should be? I'm doing a lot of online events, and I went to visit a friend's MFA class, and I got some pushback about why I'd included trans voices in a book ostensibly for girls. And I had to answer that. Well, I wasn't expecting that. I'll say all the audience that I'd encountered so far had been very welcoming of just the whole array of the inclusive mission that I had with this book. And I said, first of all, it was really my editors who chose, the subtitle of the book, Poems for Girls Becoming Themselves. But in some ways, I wanted it to be Poems for Youth Becoming Themselves. And actually, the original title of the book was Poems for Girls Becoming Women. And we changed that deliberately. I asked that to be changed because not all girls do become women. And that was really important. And what I said to this student who questioned me, first of all, I don't feel like this book is a celebration of femininity in any conventional way. And also, I feel like I quoted one of my favorite authors, who's not a poet, but a writer, Jennifer Finney Boylan, who wrote what was considered sort of the first big trans memoir in 2003 called She's Not There. And she says, I believe the adventure of life is largely finding the courage to become ourselves. And I guess that's what I wanted to start this book with someone who had found the courage to become themselves. So like Robin said, the book's divided into different categories according to emotion. So I'm going to read one from, I think it's the loneliness chapter. Yeah, a lot of us have maybe felt really lonely when we were a teenager. That was me. But definitely loneliness this past year. So I'm going to read Questions Asked to Me When I Was 10 by S. Aaron Batiste. This whole poem is a series of questions. Questions asked to me when I was 10. What are you? Why are you here? What neighborhood do you live in? So you go to the good school? Do you think you're smart? Is your family rich? Where are you from? Is your hair real? Can I touch it? What are you mixed with? Well, why do you have a French last name? How do you say your last name? Do you speak French? Why do you have an accent? Where is your accent from? Why do you wear dresses every day? What are you reading? Do you think you're special? Where do you really live? What does your father do? Are your parents married? Why did your father marry her? Does he love her? Why is she so dark? Do you and your little sister have the same father? Why is she darker than you? Why are you so skinny? Why are you dressed like that? Where did you come from? Is your father white? Is your father Spanish? Is your father Hispanic? Is your father mixed? Wait, what is he? Why are his eyes green? Are you just plain black, but you have European features, but you're pretty? Why are you always reading? Why did your family move here? What are you? Is that all your hair? Why do you have freckles? Do you ever wear pants? Where were you born? Where are you really from? Where are your parents from? Where are your grandparents from? What about their parents' parents? How do you get your hair like that? Why do you look so different? Why are your eyes shaped that way? Are you sure you're not half Korean, Chinese, Japanese, Vietnamese, Indian, Native, Mexican, Cuban, Brazilian, Guatemalan, Salvadoran? Who in your family is white? Just black, huh? What's in those books? What's wrong with you? Why do you look like that? Is your hair a weave? What are you? What are you doing here? Who do you think you are? Why are you angry? Why are you getting so upset? Why are you crying? I'm just asking questions. Thanks. One of the beautiful things about this project, even though it launched during the pandemic, was being able to connect with the poets whose poems that I chose. And I got to do a reading with S. Aaron Batiste, where I heard her read that in her own voice. It was really profound. And I feel so grateful to have made these connections through poetry. All right, I'm going to switch to like a little bit more positive, because the kind of the funnest chapter in the book to collect was attitude. Attitude meaning like boldness and grit, a little bit of sass, and not in the sense that maybe parents or teachers would tell a teen girl, like, stop giving me attitude, but like really attitude, like standing your ground in a powerful place. These are really fun poems. This is a short one by Ada Limon, and it's called How to Triumph Like a Girl. I like the lady horses best, how they make it all look easy. Like running 40 miles per hour is as fun as taking a nap, or grass. I like their lady horse swagger after winning. Ears up, girls, ears up. But mainly, let's be honest, I like that they're ladies. As if this big, dangerous animal is also a part of me. That somewhere inside the delicate skin of my body, there pumps an 8-pound female horse heart, giant with power, heavy with blood. Don't you want to believe it? Don't you want to lift my shirt and see the huge, beating genius machine that thinks? No, it knows. It's going to come in first. Now that's a fun one. I wanted to include, with the emotions, some that are really considered taboo, especially for teen girls, like rage. We don't like to think of rage from women and girls. We don't especially want to hear about rage from those living in black and brown bodies. So I'm actually not going to read your rage poem today, because a lot of them are long, but were really satisfying. And then I have a chapter, Longing, which is also, desire and crushes, and really seeing that as a potent force. Sometimes the longing is maybe for justice, which I think is for the world to be different, you know? And so I'm going to read this poem because it feels apt for our theme for today. It's also by a trans poet, Cameron Awkward Rich. He's a professor of gender and sexuality studies down at UMass. It's called Meditations in an Emergency. I wake up and it breaks my heart. I draw the blinds and the thrill of rain breaks my heart. I go outside. I ride the train. Walk among the buildings, men in Monday suits. The flight of doves, the city of tents beneath the underpass, the huddled mass, old women hawking roses, and children, all of them, break my heart. There's a dream I have in which I love the world. I run from end to end, like fingers through her hair. There are no borders, only wind. Like you, I was born. Like you, I was raised in the institution of dreaming. Hand on my heart, hand on my stupid heart. Okay, I think I might just read one more so we get to have a discussion. Maybe I'll read two short ones. From the final chapter is belonging, and the idea in the structure of the book to move from shame and rage and sadness and loneliness, and then to get to belonging, to say to readers, to young readers, to teens, that you have all these complicated selves, and they're all real, and you are also still worthy of love, and you belong to the earth and to your community and to yourself. So these poems were really, they come at the end of the book. This one is a beloved poem by Mary Oliver. You may have heard it before, but every time I read it, it kind of gets better. Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. So I think I'll stop there with Mary Oliver. Thank you, everyone. Okay, if we could have the authors come up for we're going to do a quick kind of conversation, and then if any of you have questions, I think we'll have a few minutes to ask, and then they will be at the book signing table ready to talk to you, sign books as you buy many, many books. I'm so glad we have a little cloud cover. Yes. Should we talk into the mic? Masks on for the Q&A? I'm really bad. I feel like okay up here. All right. Yeah, come on up.
I feel like we could talk all day about the themes and connections and issues in all of this beautiful work, but as I was thinking about these 4 books in particular and these authors in particular, I was thinking about how each of you are activists and writers. You've done extraordinary community work, and you spend much of your lives putting words on the page and making things of beauty. So I'd just love to hear from each of you about that intersection of passions and issues and what comes first for you, and do they balance each other perfectly, or are they at odds with each other sometimes? And yeah, love to hear your
I don't see myself as an activist. I don't label myself that way. I'm beholden to my work, and by my work, I mean whatever creative drive for photography or writing. I write across different genres, and I'm also a journalist. I think the thing that threads me is I'm always very interested in seeing beneath the surface and asking questions or inspiring others to ask questions. They're not at tension with each other. I feel like I always have to account for the time, because when you say you're writing or you're doing something or you're being very creative, it to everybody else it looks lazy, right? Like you look like you're like just comfortably doing something else, but no one knows about the tears on the keyboard or the rejections that you have to navigate and how you have to work like 50 different jobs for that one piece to bring it into reality. But so for me, it's about navigating my time in the world and then being a proper steward of what wants to come out.
I love that. It's a great question. It's not an easy answer for me. Actually convened some poets on the topic of poetry and social justice last year, and someone quoted some famous poet who it's escaping, but they said, "Poetry makes nothing happen." If you can remember who it is, let me know. So the question is, where is the intersection of being an activist and a change maker in the world and sitting alone in a room and writing poems? And it's something that I've wrestled with a lot, and I guess there's certain writing that I do, like either a personal essay or an op-ed, that feels more directly connected to, say, truth-telling and breaking silence and kind of naming systems of oppression. Especially, my wheelhouse has kind of been women and survivors of sexual violence. And it's been harder for me to get at those topics in poetry, although I'm starting to. But it's taking a long time. And I think there's always a tension between being a writer in the kind of space and quiet and solitude you need for that, and then what it means to be an activist, which is to be out there, to either be marching or organizing or in community. And that's really difficult. And I think for me, some periods of my life have been more protecting the writing space. I mean, certainly the past year, kind of none of those things have been happening. No, I mean, I'll be honest. Yeah, some people wrote their like masterpiece during the pandemic, but that wasn't me. And I'm fine. I'm glad to just name that. But I think there have been other times where it's felt like absolutely vital to come forward in the world as an activist. Definitely for me around the Me Too movement. And then like founding some different organizations. But you have to also give yourself a rest if you're an activist. And I'm really curious to hear what Angela and Anne have to say. Like, how do you maintain that drive and that energy? And so I guess it's maybe goes in cycles.
Well, let's see. First of all, I will say that Abby and Rowan and Jamie said they want me to talk. So, okay, here I am. They're here for moral support. I definitely am primarily an activist, an organizer, and teacher. I am not a writer, and that, I think, made this project really challenging. I liked the writing part, where I got to sit down and be creative and put all my thoughts and my heart on the page. And then I hand it to the publisher and they're like, and I hand it to the editor and they're like, so then I was like, oh, I hate this process. This is not what I signed up for. And here we are 4 years later. And there's this beautiful book, and it was like, feels like it was all worth it. So people are already like, what's your next book? I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is not where I want to be putting my energy and my time. You know, it's like I would have to steal these moments from my very busy life to find time to work on this. And then, as many of you know, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer last year, right before the pandemic, and so had this massive break. That's really been my primary path this past 14 months. It's coincided just so interestingly with the pandemic, but I have become more of a writer since that happened, and have a lot of people saying, is your next book about healing? So we'll see. You know, if anyone's inspired to do that for me, I'll work on the healing and the activism, and y'all can do the writing for me.
I am the flip side, because I was an activist not by choice, but just ended up there and completely burnt out, and writing like restores me. And so for me, I'm like, can I just do this instead? I just want to sit in my little room as an introvert and only talk to people in small doses. But for me, they are so intertwined. It's a really good question, because I realized in part that part of my activism was about trying to bring up conversations and change the way we think about how we talk about things and the questions that people consider asking. And for me, like, activism in a direct, like, at the State House way, that was one way to do it. But I feel like, for me, I can touch so many 12-year-olds in all these red states. And that just feels like a really important itch to be scratching for myself. And so I find that it's such a good fit for me, just so that I feel sustained as a person when I'm channeling the anger through this way that does not drain me.
Yes, and from the outside, I just want to say that when you have 14,000 middle school students reading your book about gun legislation and stereotypes about gun ownership, that is activism, that is political work, that has tremendous value in the world. And Angela, I want to say that your blog posts, you are a writer. You can hate publishing and still be a writer. So those are very different those are very, very different things. I hate publishing also, but I am a writer. Is it raining? Yes. Woo! Do you want us to ask one more? Keep going? Thumbs up? Do you want to get wet, or do you want to go buy books? Okay, one more question. I was just thinking about how with every one of my books, I always have an audience in mind when I'm writing, whether that's a particular person, sometimes it's a person who's alive, sometimes it's a person who's not alive, or an audience. And having that person or that group in mind is what keeps me going when the days are hard with the writing. So I'd just love to know, who did you have in mind? Who are you writing for with these books?
That's a really good question, because I've always been inspired by how Toni Morrison got flack for focusing her work and her book on the Black community and the Black experience in America. And regardless of some of the pushback that people may have about the accessibility of her work, I love her. And I've thought about different creatives and different people that I've talked to. It's always felt like the work needs to come, for at least for me, it needs to be about what I'm trying to surface, audience after. Even though when you're putting together a book proposal, you better be writing about audience and book sales, and like you have to put a business hat on. So it's a very interesting tension to walk. I say for myself, I can't really think of audience because some of the ways I write and for some of the things even now that I'm trying to put out into the world are very different. And I'm not sure who's going to read it, but it's very scary because of that. Because you have to be able to prove to a publisher, if you go that route, why will it sell? And for me, I'm beholden to the work, whatever that is and whatever that thing that's calling me, even if I may get in trouble by putting it out into the world, I'll have to stand accountable for it. Yeah, I guess audience, yeah, I can't really think of audience, but you clearly, all of you are audience, and I hope you buy the book. So that being said.
For you.
It's for you. That's great. Well, for this particular book, I had a very specific audience, which was teen girls and gender nonconforming youth, ages 12 and up. And in a way, they were with me that the whole time that I was both seeking the poems, hunting and gathering, compiling the poems, sequencing them, and then when I had to write, I wrote an introduction, which is very personal, and then an introduction to each of the emotions. But I was really thinking of my teen self, like back in the 1980s, the toxic 80s, which I'm forgetting who said it, maybe Abby said it was colorblind, which was exactly my experience in a small, rural, mostly white high school, and where I was in the closet as a queer person and carried a lot of shame and really kind of hiding myself and pretending. And so I was collecting poems and writing to the teen girl that I was, and in the hopes that I would also be speaking to teens today, even though I know that Gen Z is, I just love Gen Z. They are really, they wrestle with some different struggles than, for example, our generation did, but like in terms of identities and awareness and like real acceptance, they're light years ahead. But that was always my litmus, was like reading these poems and choosing them through looking through the eyes of the teen that I was, and then for the young people I hoped would read the book and their grandparents. I will say my editor, I got pushback because I chose some pretty edgy poems. There's poems about sexual violence. There's poems about eating disorders. There's poems about abortion. And my editor would push back. One of the eating disorder poem, she was like, I'm just worried about the grandmas. We want this to be a gift book. And I was kind of like, well, first, F the grandmas. But then, I'm sorry, I was like, also, don't underestimate the grandmas. And to be honest, I've had some awesome emails from people saying, I'm getting this for my trans granddaughter who's going to Smith, or I wanted that older generation to read the poems and be thinking about them too. So yeah, I guess I hope that it would speak to people like all phases, because we're all becoming ourselves.
Let's see. I really wrote this book with families in mind who know they should care or do care about social justice, but aren't sure how to bring that into their families and begin to have brave conversations with their kids and show up for change in their communities. And as we wrote together and we worked on these chapters together, it really became clear that there was going to be a much more diverse group of people reading this, because it was a diverse group of people writing it. And I think that most people can pick this book up and find something in it that they're going to learn from. However, I am also clear that because my voice is the main voice, and I come from a very particular set of identities, privileged identities, that people with privileged identities might resonate overall with the book more so. However, people who are, anyone who's like, I actually need to know more about disability justice, they pick this up, they read, you know, Abby and Rowan's chapter, and anyone can learn a lot from that chapter. I learned a lot from reading their chapter. So, you know, I really think that from the people that have read it so far, people have said, oh, this book is for everyone, really.
So I start with a specific audience because I'm writing for like 4th to 7th grade kids. But this book, I was very conscious of, with Flight of the Puffin, I really wanted to reach the full range of who is in a classroom, because I wanted it to be used for classroom reads where you would have these conversations start to come up. And so my goal is that each person will relate to at least one of the 4 characters at the beginning, and by the end they will connect to all 4 of them. And so I want to bring my audience on this journey of, yes, you start here, but look how far you can grow in the course of the story. And so I'm very conscious of trying to make it so that it doesn't get banned too easily. I'm just sort of like just sneak it in and sort of have everyone love the characters by the time that you're really digging into some hard issues. And so I'm very conscious of audience as I write.
Do any of you have questions for these amazing writers that we have on the stage here? I think you will all be sticking around, happy to sign books and talk more in person. Any burning questions out there? All right, maybe one last big, loud round of applause for these amazing folks on stage and also for our community. Woo-hoo! Here we are. All right, books are over that way, and see you over there. Yes. 10% of book sales will be going to the Root. Woohoo! And another 10% of Parenting for Social Justice, all book sales are going to the Root. Is that correct? Yes. So thank you to everyone's books for donating that 10%.
I'm fully vaccinated. Like this is like crushing against the boundaries. I've been working. Oh, no, you can. We'll make it quick. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Then we know when we are doing this.
Yes, sir.
Do you want me to be within these 2 poles? They want us within 2 poles.
Gotta be
There we go.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Okay.
Wait, I'm gonna be in the way. Are you gonna move?
Yeah. Like some hand. That makes sense.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, I need a copy of this from
I've got like the crappiest phone everywhere.
McLean, maybe you could send me.
Absolutely.
Mac. Okay, this is fabulous.
Dane.
Well done.
Stay.
And then you have your side people waiting, your fan club away.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. You're good. You're so good. You're so good. So we're going to go sign.
So let's go sign. Everybody, your sign.